Hi, welcome back to God and Good for Girls. My name is Isabella Hanson, and today we are going to be talking about what a Christian girl's standards should be when she's considering dating a man and even more so marrying. My last episode was on Christian nationalism, and that was a pretty intense episode, so I wanted to do something that was a little bit more lighthearted for this one. I tend to do kind of like a every other week as far as like intense research. So 1 week will be intense research, and then the next week will be maybe something lighter that I know more about, that I don't have to research as much, and that gives me more time to do intense research for the next thing. So this one is kind of something that I know a little bit more about. It's been something that my parents and I have been talking about for years, of course, because they want to raise a Christian daughter who is wise in her understanding of men and how to conduct herself around men. So this is basically like my sharing that wisdom with you in case you maybe didn't have parents who were giving you the wisdom and insight that you needed in order to gauge a potential relationship in a healthy manner. And this is going to be kind of chaotic, honestly. I am going to just basically going to go through a bunch of different things that Christian girls often look for, and I'm going to tell you what, at least in my opinion, is the Christian approach to things. And of course, a lot of this is my opinion, but at the same time, this opinion is based on what I know from scripture. So just keep in mind, I am not trying to force anybody to think a certain way or conduct themselves in a certain way. I am saying that there are certain ways that Christian girls, could conduct themselves that's kind of common sense, and you can pretty much get this common sense from just reading scripture. Let's start off with height. Many girls' standards are quite literally high. They want somebody who is tall. And I don't really blame them. This seems like a pretty reasonable request, a pretty reasonable thing to want in a man. However, this has gotten way too far. I think that a lot of people are kind of rebelling against it now, but for a while, a lot of girls were going just crazy off the rails. They wanted their boyfriends to be like a foot, 2 feet taller than them, and like you can't even kiss that person. Like you can't even reach that person. So I'm not sure how it got so extreme. I would guess that and this is just a guess, I would guess that probably TikTok and like especially book talk and like the kind of romance novels and whatnot, where there's like the super tall brooding man and the super dainty weak woman, and they fall in love because I don't know why I don't read that garbage, but a lot of people do read that. And I think that has really influenced a lot of the way certain girls will approach a relationship. So here's the deal. Height is important, but height is not everything. Height can be valuable. It can scare off people. I think that there is a legitimate reason why so many girls want somebody who is tall. My family and I were on a trip to DC, and of course, most people know about all the crime in DC. There's so much chaos. We were not really disturbed by anyone. We were there for like a little over a week, I believe, and we weren't really disturbed by anybody. And I think that is due in large part to the fact that my dad is quite tall, and he is also pretty fit. So he didn't really give off the kind of impression of like, this is somebody that, you can mess with. And he also didn't give off the impression that like the people with him were people that you could mess with, because he's this tall person who can protect himself and his family. And I think that's why a lot of girls are looking for someone tall. They're looking for someone who can protect them, who can make them feel safe, and who can make them feel more like a woman. I think in our current society, we have so many things that are telling women to be masculine. And I think even subconsciously, a lot of the feminists will say like they want somebody who makes them feel like a woman. They want somebody who will make them feel more feminine. And the height difference will do that because men tend to be taller than women. So yeah, boiling this all down, it's not wrong to want somebody who is taller than you, and it's not wrong to want somebody who is objectively tall. But it becomes a problem when you want somebody who is unreasonably tall, you have an unreasonable height difference, and when you make everything about height. Height is nice, but it's not everything. Personally, I would want to marry somebody who is taller than me. That's my preference. And that wouldn't be very hard because I'm not very tall. And I'm okay with having somebody who's only like an inch taller than me. It's not that big of a deal to me. I'd even be willing to marry somebody who is shorter than me if I know that he is capable of protecting me in spite of his shorter height, which he would be short for a man if he's shorter than me. Like I said, I'm not very tall. The next point is physical fitness. A lot of women will prefer a man who is fit rather than a man who is thinner or overweight. And I don't see anything wrong with this inherently. I think that it's only natural for women to gravitate towards the men who can protect them best. However, we need to be thinking not just about our physical well-being, but also our emotional and spiritual well-being. We need to be seeking first a man who can protect us spiritually and emotionally before going after a man who can protect us physically. If we find a man who can protect us in all of those ways, I would say that that would be ideal. But the thing is, bodies can change. People can work out. People can improve their fitness unless they have like some kind of medical condition, but that's pretty rare. People can make adjustments to their bodies in order to grow and be better. And they can do this with their emotional state as well, but I found that more often than not, the physical body is a lot easier of a thing to change and shape than the emotional maturity of a person and the spiritual well-being. And the physical body would also probably take less time in many cases. So there's nothing wrong with going after a guy who you are physically attracted to, especially because he's physically fit, but you do have to keep in mind that not all physically fit men are going to be caring for you and are going to be respectful and everything that you need them to be. And again, what I would want is a man who is physically fit and also spiritually fit and emotionally fit. But I would be willing to marry a man who is not physically fit if I knew that he was actively working on becoming more physically fit so that he could protect me better. I would be much more willing to be with a person who is open to change and open to growth as a person rather than somebody who is just physically attractive and emotionally and spiritually stagnant. Many girls will reject a man because he's white. We have, for some reason in our society, villainized and oftentimes dehumanized white men. A woman could be attracted to a black man and not a white man, and this is perfectly acceptable. This is not racist in any way. In fact, this is glorified. Yet, if a woman is attracted to white men and not black men, suddenly she is racist, and she is somehow preferring white men and saying that they are superior to black men. This is absolutely unacceptable. A woman's preferences when it comes to marrying and dating should not be considered racism unless they actually are rooted in actual racism. There's a difference between a woman who says, Asian men are fine, and I like Asian men, but I wouldn't marry one, and a woman who says, Asian men are awful, and Asian men are evil, so I would never marry one. One woman is saying, these are decent human beings, they're just like any other human being, and I will treat them with respect, but I'm just simply not attracted to men of that particular skin color and bone structure and whatnot. The other woman is saying these people are inherently inferior to whatever race this woman is, and for that reason, she will not marry them. It's always important to be respectful to people, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you have to be physically attracted to them in a romantic way. we can be kind and civil and consider all people of all skin colors and nationalities to be equal, while still not being attracted to all of them. We're okay with a girl being more attracted to blonde men versus dark-haired men until suddenly it's because the blonde men are German and the dark-haired men are Hispanic. We're not allowed, apparently, to be attracted to white men exclusively. I think that women should be able to have an open mind when it comes to relationships. I think they should be able to look at people of all different skin colors and say, now I have a preference, but God might show me a man who doesn't match that preference, but who is perfect for me, who is godly and honest and kind and respectful of me and understanding of me, and who helps me grow in my relationship with God, who is not my preference as far as what a person's race would be. Women need to be able to accept differences from their preferences. And that's kind of the point of many of my points in this video, is it's okay to have preferences. There's nothing inherently wrong with that. It's when you go too far with those preferences, or when you act like you know better than God because of these preferences, that becomes a problem. Okay, so before I go into my next point, I want to do a little quick blurb on something that I've seen every now and then on social media, which is the desire for a man who is comfortable with going out and buying feminine products for women. I have mixed feelings about this. If you like a man who is unashamed to go and do that for you, okay, that's good, great for you. If you don't, okay, that's good, great for you. I personally would not hold a man to that standard. I don't think that's something that is worth breaking up over if you are already in a relationship and you figure out that he doesn't want to buy feminine products for you. To me, it's kind of like if, say, your boyfriend went and asked you to go buy men's underwear for him. I think most women would feel pretty awkward about that, and I think most men would feel kind of awkward about buying feminine products for a woman. Even though, obviously, you're not the one who needs the men's underwear, and obviously he's not the one who needs the feminine products, it's still pretty awkward to be buying those things because they're of a highly sensitive nature. So have your preferences, but just remember you need to be gracious and give in some areas. So my next points are taste in film, music, books, just, media preferences. His media preferences. If he doesn't like the same kind of things as you, that can be okay, and that can also not be okay. This really depends on what the difference is between what you guys like. I am not an opposites attract person. I don't believe that people should be looking for people who don't match them very well. I never understood why that was common or popular. To me, you should be going after somebody who can complement your strengths and weaknesses. So I guess opposites attract in that way. Like, I'm not very good at math, and I would like to homeschool my potential children someday. So I would maybe want to marry somebody who's good at math, who enjoys math, so that I don't have to teach the math. But that's not really opposites attract, because I would still want a man who is interested in the same things as I am, who is still the same religion as I am, who has a very similar personality to me. And I kind of say that as a, preface to this, this talk about media. A man's taste in music is not his most important quality. His taste in movies are not his most important quality. His taste in books are not his most important quality. But they are something to consider. If he really likes the horror genre and you really like the Hallmark genre, this might be a conflict of interest for you guys, especially if you can't really compromise on this. Now, if you can compromise on this and you can respect each other's opinions and preferences, it could make a really good couple. But more often than not, when you have two people with very different preferences, they will clash and it will be harder for them to communicate and compromise with each other on those things. It's completely different from something like if you both are sci-fi geeks and one of you prefers Star Wars and the other one prefers Star Trek. The ultimate, clash of the fandoms, but you're still both sci-fi geeks. And I would be willing to bet that most people who watch Star Trek would also be willing to watch Star Wars. And most people who watch Star Wars would be willing to watch Star Trek. So there's a huge difference between both being sci-fi geeks and having completely different things that you guys are interested in. And it's also important to make sure that your guy who you are attracted to and considering dating, considering marrying, is not somebody who listens to things that are inappropriate or watches things that are inappropriate or reads things that are inappropriate. If you really want to know where he's at with what kind of media he consumes, ask him about it. Ask him about his interests. And if you're kind of suspicious about those things, I would say it's perfectly reasonable to research them. It's not being stalkerish. It's protecting you from a relationship that could last a long time and have a damaging effect on your mental and physical and emotional health. You want to know whether he reads pornographic books before you're in a relationship with him. You want to know if he listens to horrible gangster rap that brags about the most atrocious acts imaginable before you get in a relationship with him. You don't want to be walking into something that could seriously hurt you. But at the end of the day, if there are no major red flags with his taste in media and you guys don't have super opposing things that can't be compromised on, media consumption, media preferences are not super important. If I was to go back again to my personal preference, I would personally prefer somebody who's interested in the same kinds of things as I am. But I'm not going to make that, the deciding factor in the relationship. If he and I have a great personality match and we just go super well together and he's a super godly person and somebody who helps me grow in my relationship with God, and I can help him grow in his relationship with God, I'm not going to end the relationship because he prefers a different genre. He likes super hardcore alien movies, and I don't really care about super hardcore alien movies. I'm not going to end a relationship over something like that, because that's somewhat petty at that point. Next, we're talking about wealth. And yeah, we're bouncing around a lot. There's not really much of a connection between media taste and wealth. But like I said, I have certain points that I just wanted to get to and certain things that I wanted to address. And let me know in the comments if there are any other things that you want me to address. If there are anything else that you are having questions about that you think maybe you would want a Christian perspective on, I would be happy to answer that. One of the things that I've seen a lot of in conjunction with heightened physical fitness is a desire for a man who is wealthy. He has to make over a certain threshold in order for him to be a candidate. This is a problem because you're basically boiling down that man's essence to how much he has as far as muscle, how much he has as far as inches, and how much he has as far as money. What matters is to find a man who is responsible, who knows how to manage money, who has a plan for his financial future, and a man who is willing to work hard to see that plan happen. I would much rather personally marry somebody who has very little money than somebody who has a lot of money but has no idea what he's going to do with it and has no idea how to manage it. Wealth is helpful because it can give you things that are necessary, it can give you things that are pleasures, and it can just generally make your life more enjoyable, but it is not the end of the story. It is not the deciding factor in whether or not you will be in a successful relationship and have a happy life. You shouldn't date a man just because he's poor and you think that that means that he'll be humble. You shouldn't date a rich man just because he's rich because you think that that means he'll be responsible and, caring for your needs just like he cares for the needs of his bank account. Men can be good men or bad men no matter what their economic status is. So what you really should be looking at is not what his current economic status is, but what his future economic status can possibly be. And remember that wealth can disappear overnight. If we have another stock market crash, and that's where most of his wealth comes from, you could lose everything that you married him to get. What matters is finding somebody who, regardless of his economic status, can care for you and has a plan to care for you. Responsibly, you need to make sure that somebody is able to actually provide for you before you marry him, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you shouldn't be involved with in a romantic relationship with him. That doesn't necessarily mean that you should avoid dating him. Now, you could have to wait for a good amount of years before he's ready to support you and a family with you, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you should just give up on him altogether. If he is a man who is godly and matches your personality well, and you complement each other's strengths and weaknesses, you should not give up on him just because you're going to have to wait a little while for him to be able to provide for you. All right, one last point before I wrap things up for today. The last one is confidence. How confident should the man be? Well, obviously, if he's too confident, this could be a sign of machoism, and that is something you definitely want to avoid in your life. If he's not confident enough, he could be a nice guy. He never stands up for you. He never stands up for himself. He never stands up for anything. He just kind of shrugs his shoulders and goes along with things. He lets you decide where to go every single time. He never makes a decision for himself. It's important to find that balance. Somebody who is humble but also confident. He's willing to be wrong unless he knows for a fact that what he believes is right, such as the basis of Christianity. You need to be looking for a man who is confident in the important things, but is willing to be humble in many other things. A man who is willing to make compromises with you and recognize that he's not always right. And also a man who's willing to confront you when you are acting like you think you are always right. It's hard to find the right level of confidence, and it varies depending on what kind of personality you're looking for. But it is important to find somebody who has some confidence and some humility. If he doesn't have any of one of those, then he is a massive walking red flag, and you need to steer clear. But if I could summarize this entire episode, my advice to young girls would be find a man who is godly, who makes you focus on God and makes you worship God and doesn't draw your attention away from God. Find somebody who is going to be there to support you in your pursuit of a relationship with God, not somebody who is going to distract you from your relationship with God. Find somebody whose personality matches yours really well. You can bounce off of each other super well. You understand what each other are thinking at just a glance. That'll take longer to develop, but if that eventually happens, when you guys are getting to know each other, you have something strong and you have something valuable and you have something that you probably want to hold on to. You need to be looking for a guy who is patient, humble, and confident when he needs to be. You need to be looking for a guy who is willing to better himself in order to protect you. This is meaning bettering himself physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. He needs to be willing to better himself for you, and you need to be willing to better yourself for him. If he's the kind of guy where you don't think you need to do any better with your own life in order to be qualified for him, he's not the kind of guy you should be going out with, and he's not the kind of guy you should be marrying. Is he honest? Is he respectful? How does he talk about his parents? How does he treat your parents? These are all important questions that you need to be asking. At the end of the day, the way you should judge whether a man is right for you to be in a relationship with, be that dating at your stage of life or marriage, maybe a little later, it should not be petty things. It should not be more trivial things, surface level things. It should be the deepest things. And you can kind of build off of that. But you should be looking first for somebody who is going to support you in the most important ways, and then somebody who is able to support you in the less important ways. If he can support you in the most important ways and most of the less important ways, he's a good man. It is important, though, to remember that not every man who is a decent person needs to be your husband. It's okay to have male friends. Now, those male friendships may need to look a little bit different once you're actually in a dating relationship or in a marriage, but it is still important to have male friends, because if you don't, you could be opening yourself up to only getting the perspective of one man, or even worse, only women. This is a problem because God made male and female in order to complement each other, in order to complement each other's strengths and weaknesses. There are certain things that men just don't see that they need to be able to see. There are certain things that women just don't see that they need to be able to see. And the two genders can bounce off of each other and complement each other and help each other grow, hopefully towards God. Well, that wraps up today's episode. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you really enjoyed this video. The next video will probably be more intense than this one. So definitely keep an eye out for that. Please like and subscribe so we can share God's truth around the world. God bless, and Soli Deo Gloria.